Folks, the U.S. democratic system and election system have been under attack for quite a long time. And recent information has been revealed how complicit certain social media networks have been. Now, the 2016 election was a giant case of that attack, and the current president sitting in office was the beneficiary of that attack and the complicity of Facebook and Twitter. And I'm going to basically give you a little information, and then I'm going to tell you specifically how black people were attacked on various fronts. Now, it started with, to be honest with you, a severely flawed Democratic candidate by the name of Hillary Clinton. This woman should never, I repeat, this woman should never have been the standard bearer for the Democratic Party. Anybody else, and I do mean anybody else, would have been a superior candidate to Hillary Clinton. But she was tied in with the establishment, with the big money donors, with various people in the Democratic Party who either she had stuff on or owed her favors, or legitimately felt like she was the real deal. And most of us other people did not want to see her anywhere near the White House. But after she defeated, or actually with the help of her cronies, defeated Bernie Sanders, we had a choice of having to support the lesser of two evils, i.e. the Republican candidate Donald Trump. And to be quite honest with you, that in my mind was a no-brainer, though for white women, white suburban women, for whatever reason, they felt like Donald Trump would be better suited for their needs with the con job that he did. And I need to start calling him Don the Con, aka Small Hands Don. But I digress. Facebook and Twitter, well, let's specifically look at Facebook. Facebook in the United States has 231 million active users on a monthly basis. Twitter has 68 million active users in the United States. Obviously, those two are by far the largest social media platforms. Well, a funny thing happened at the way to the ranch here. Back in 2015, Facebook knew that its platform could be manipulated. Yet, all the way through up until 2017, they claimed the exact opposite until whistles got blown on them. They were called into Congress, and the guy that you see in the picture, Mark Zuckerberg, didn't even have the decency to show up. He sent his attorneys to appear in his place. Funny thing about this guy, he was trying to get into the Russian market, and he shows up to meet with Putin of all people. And this guy is notoriously known to be a casual dresser, but he shows up to meet with Putin in a shirt, tie, and a suit. And the same thing happened when he was trying to get into the China market. He shows up to meet the leaders of China in a suit, shirt, and tie. He also, for both of those markets, agreed to provide them with filters so that the government could filter out any unwanted information that they didn't want their people to see. Yet, when Facebook and the rest of the social media outlets are called to Congress, again, this guy doesn't even have the decency to show up. He sends his attorneys. Now, they are looking at calling all of these guys back in again. And I wonder if he's going to show, which I believe they are requiring that he show. And I wonder how he's going to dress. But that being said, Facebook allowed Cambridge Analytica, which is based out of the United Kingdom, but had a U.S. Affiliate or branch here that was run by, of all people, Steve Bannon and the Mercer family. That particular company was given access to 275,000 Facebook users, and it was able to send out paid questionnaires to those 275,000 people, and in doing so was able to obtain their information. But now here's the kicker. Once they got access to those 275,000 people, they also had access to their friends and associates list. Bottom line, they obtained access to Facebook's records for 50 million people. 50 million people, of which approximately 10 million of those 50 million people were black subscribers. Now, that's basically about the 20% of the number that they had access to. Now, Twitter has 68 million active US users, and of those 68 million, there are approximately 8 million active black users. Now, I say all of this to give you some numbers information. Now, we know that Russian bots were in this thing to attack America, both through racial misinformation and economic misinformation. Now, there's no telling how many people the Russian bots, I take that back. There is a way to tell how many people those Russian bots were able to interact with, but since I'm not in the government, I don't have access to that information. The only way that you can get access to that information would be to go through all of the social media platforms, which the government is able to do, because they recently told us that there were approximately 2 million Russian bots messages attacking a certain feature that the government was pushing, but I digress. Now, you put those two things together, Twitter and Facebook, and add a third, voter suppression. The Republican Party obviously has been pushing voter suppression laws ever since 2010. So I count them as being part of the problem as far as the attack on the United States or U.S. democratic system and our voting system. You add that together with Cambridge Analytica, which is a company that specializes in psychological profiling and adjustments, and there you have it. Now, there's no way of actually knowing how effective Cambridge Analytica was. There is a way to know how effective the Republican Party was as far as voter suppression is concerned, and they were able to knock off, during the 2016 election, approximately 5% of the African American vote. I don't know how much they were able to knock off of the Hispanic vote or the Asian vote, but there are numbers that indicated that 5% of the African American vote were knocked off during that particular election. Now, I say all of this because of the closeness of the election, the fact that Facebook admitted to being complicit with how Analytica was able to get in there and affect people psychologically, potentially changing their minds about who to vote for. The Russians obviously hated Hillary Clinton because of what she said about Vladimir Putin, so they were actively working against her. The fact that they created voter apathy, and I'm talking about Analytica, they created voter apathy amongst the black community because it's always been known that the black community has been the secret weapon of the Democratic Party. And when there is huge black voter turnout, they win. And when there is average black voter turnout, and I mean by average, I mean 80% black voter turnout, the Republicans win. So let me say this again. When there is high voter turnout, I'm talking 90% or greater, black votes in any election, the Democratic Party normally will win, and they'll normally win going away. When there is only 80% of black voter participation, then the Republican Party wins. So basically, you have a window of approximately 10% that Cambridge Analytica, the Russian bots, and the Republican Party had to knock down in order to win the presidential election. And that's exactly what happened. I have a good friend of mine located on the East Coast, and he happens to be Hispanic. And he was sending me to various Facebook articles that were blatantly wrong. And he would call me up, point me out to the advertisement, and ask me what I thought and if the advertisement was right, because I told him you can't believe everything that you see on Facebook or Twitter. And some of the stuff there was ridiculous. I do mean ridiculous. And I don't even want to mention some of the attacks that were made on President Obama, his family, and Hillary Clinton. I'm not going there. But when I pointed out to him the ridiculousness of the articles that he was looking at, and I told him to do his own research, every single time I told him that, and I told him where to go to check out whether the information he was looking at was accurate or not, he would always come back to me and say, nah, that particular story was wrong. And I found, and he told me that he had found out that it was basic propaganda. Well, there were a lot of articles on Facebook and on Twitter where people pretending to be black people were pressing the point that black votes didn't mean anything and that there was no reason to vote, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Well, obviously I wasn't going down that line, and I would push back every single time I saw something like that. But I know for a fact that other people basically took that to school, and when it came time to vote in the election, they absolutely did not vote. Now, if you know what happened in the election, in 3 states, a total of, I believe it was 50,000 votes over 3 individual states. That would be Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. Those 3 states went out to Donald Trump. If Clinton had won those 3 states, she would be president of the United States right now. The black vote in those 3 states was down approximately 15%. And 15% of the black voters in those states is a hell of a lot more than 50,000 votes. So the attack against black people specifically, while basically pitting white people against each other, which tended to cancel themselves out, the attack on black people is what basically gave Donald Trump his victory. Now, you may think that I'm blowing smoke, but as always, I tell you to do your own research. Check out all the articles on Cambridge Analytica, which Facebook has now suspended their relationship with. Check out what went down with the Russian bots and the number of messages that they were shooting across the social media platforms. It doesn't take much to see all of the voter suppression laws that are now slowly being reversed. I refer you to the state of Pennsylvania, which recently had its congressional lines redrawn by the Supreme Court of the state of Pennsylvania, and the Republican legislature, which had a stranglehold on their legislature, attempted to get their own state court's decision overturned at the Supreme Court, and lost on 2 occasions. So now their gerrymandered districts were redrawn and are going to go into effect in May of this year. Wisconsin was also challenged because they too had a substantial stranglehold on their state legislature, where in a bad year they were a lock to maintain 66 seats out of 100 seats in their state legislature, and a good year obviously would go up. Well, they are being sued, and their case is going to be heard in front of the Supreme Court in October, which will be too late for their lines to be redrawn for the 2018 midterm elections. But I believe that the people suing Wisconsin are going to win. So their lines will be redrawn in Wisconsin subsequent to the election. Now, there are 16 other states that are in similar positions. And if the Supreme Court decides against the legislature of Wisconsin, you can damn sure know that there's going to be a sea change as far as gerrymandering is concerned, and the congressional districts that are going to have to be redrawn, which will put the Democrats in a much more secure footing, both to take over the legislature, the House of Representatives, I should say, in the 2018 election, which that looks like it's already going to be the case, even with the gerrymandering that's done. But for 2020, the congressional seats, as far as the Senate is concerned, those will absolutely be up for grabs, as will the ability for the Democrats to take over the White House. So just keep yourselves informed as to what's going on. Know that we as black people have a lot to say as far as who gets elected. And I refer you to Doug Jones, who it was the black vote, and it's specifically the black female vote, that helped to get him elected down in Alabama. And as well, we need to hold the people that we get elected, we need to hold their feet to the fire, because if you're unaware of it, there recently was a banking bill that was passed in the Senate with the help of 17 Democrats. That particular bill is seeking to roll back various rules and requirements of the Dodd-Frank banking bill, which was put into place after the 2008 banking fiasco. But one of the things that pisses me off about the Democrats, they allowed a particular feature of that bill to remain within the bill when they voted for it. And the feature I'm talking about is the requirement that all banks, both big and small, keep specific records, age, race, gender, etc., on all mortgage applicants, and whether the applicant was approved or denied. They are now allowing all of the smaller banks to no longer have to keep those records or provide them to the federal government. So in my mind, that is just allowing racial discrimination to occur within the mortgage lending industry. And it took us years in order to prove that we were being discriminated against as far as mortgages were concerned, and now they're rolling back that, and in particular black people. So, folks, keep your eyes open, stay woke, make your voice heard. Please, no matter how hard it is or how much of a hardship you think it is, get to know the people that are running for office and vote.